I'm young, and I know that I'm not necessarily a Porsche expert, nor am I a car value expert of any kind, and nor am I sort of the oracle of car values. But I have noticed something that many other people have noticed in the past year and a half, I'd say, almost about 2 years, ever since our current world came to shape in the way that it is now. There has been an uptick in interest in the unloved generation of Porsche 911. And I wasn't around, well, I was, but I wasn't really, an active member of society, you might say, when I was 7 years old in 2010, when appreciation began for the 964s. But what I will say is going back on the internet and reading old forums tells a very interesting story, and one that is playing out again. History sort of repeats itself. It finds a funny way of doing that, and it seems like that's exactly what's happening right now. And I'll give a few reasons why. And I'll try to make this video quicker than my normal videos, because I tend to ramble. But I found an old forum from January 18th, 2010 at 1:38 p.m. A Renless member asked in a forum if $15,000 would be reasonable for finding an investment grade 964. Now, in 2022, that sounds ridiculous that you would be able to find an investment grade, top quality condition 964 for $15,000. Under $15,000, he said. Now, there was a time where that was more than possible. There was a time, I'd say, yeah, $20,000, $25,000 would get you a pristine condition 964. You could find them, and they were again, I wasn't around, but from what I've heard, from what I've been told by all of the older Porsche people that I know, from what I've seen online and everything, the 964 was the unloved generation of Porsche 911 because it had flaws in the engine design that would make it leak oil and lose compression and need rebuilds and all of that. It had non-traditional styling. It didn't look like as put together or solid or beautiful looking as the 993, and it didn't have the classic 911 looks of the G-body cars, but it was sort of this in-between middle child that was unloved. And all of a sudden people started realizing that with a few modifications or just a few upgrades in order to make the cars more reliable, even just a rebuild to remediate some of the issues, or a little bit of love and a good amount of money, you could make a 964 into one of the greatest feeling and sounding and handling and just performing air-cooled 911s of them all. And it was just this beautiful sweet spot where you could get one for not that much money and just turn it into the 911 that you would want. You could just pick and choose things from other 911s that you would want to do to it, and you would be able to do that, and you would just get this perfect 911 out of it. Hence you have brands like Singer, and there's one in Japan that builds these resto-modded 964s where they sort of change the looks of them to not look quite as out there as a 964, look more like the earlier cars, but have that revised performance and put an engine in there that could really maximize the capability of that chassis. And you would just end up with these beautiful cars, and a lot of them have been either resto-modded or just restored in general. And so nowadays what you see is the average is almost 80 grand and still climbing for a good condition, good color combination 964 that's been well cared for, regardless of miles. That's the thing. These cars have been taken care of to a point now and are regarded at a point now where there's a classic, that's a classic car. Anything that's gonna break is going to be replaced, and so it doesn't matter anymore how many miles that car has. It's just about the car itself, how it's presented. It's a desirable car regardless of how much someone's driven it. In fact, with a lot of these older cars, the more someone's driven it, the more likely there's been an engine rebuild, or some of the major service issues either haven't occurred because it's a good example, or did occur and were rectified. And that's what's happening now with the 996. You have all of these cars that have either been preserved, that are now rapidly appreciating. You have a lot of cars that are high mileage but have had the major service items addressed, and therefore are still very good value propositions and will be good to go for many years. And couple that with the fact that people are realizing that even though there are inherent flaws with the way that the 996 engines were built, they are, with a little bit of money, very fixable and preventable for the rest of the car's life. All of these factors that come together that are just making this car rapidly appreciate. And my personal opinion is it's only a matter of time before a company like Singer or Gunther Works, or one of these restomodding companies or futurifying companies will take the 996 platform and just create an unbelievable car out of it. Because you have this platform that sort of is like the 964. It's the middle child between the last of the air-cooled and the first really good sort of setting the new direction for modern 911's 997. And so in the middle you have this 996 with some out there styling. It has some bugs, and it isn't one of the traditional air-cooled cars, but it isn't one of the incredible modern 997, 991, 992 cars. So it sort of sits in the middle there and was pushed to the side for so many years, but people are weeding out the good ones, finding all of these incredible cars that can be either turned back into some incredible original shape, or just preserved, or turned into the car that you want, just with a few modifications, a lot like the 964. And so what you're seeing is they're appreciating regardless of mileage. The other day, for I think, what is it, $43,000 after auction fees, a almost 80,000 mile Porsche 996 in ocean blue sold. And that is sort of, in my opinion, going to be the new normal. And I don't think it's a bubble, because we've seen this happen before. You know, that those middle child cars go from being the most unloved to some of the most loved. I mean, all of the special edition 964s are now in the multiple hundreds of thousands of dollar range, and they're just completely untouchable by people who could have bought them for reasonable money, you know, 10, 15 years ago. That's already happening with the 996. I mean, when I first, 5 years ago, when I first started looking at prices of cars, when I was, you know, oh, I can drive in a few years, let me look. A 996 GT3 was $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, and now they're, for the most part, above $100,000 and climbing quickly. Don't even get me started on the GT2s. The turbos are going up, and I think that this is just the sort of beginning of that. You just have to look at the 964, and you know, there's been more 996s that were made than 964s by quite some margin, but there were also far more 997s that were made than 996s, and far more 991s that were made than 997s, and so on. You know, it keeps going. And like the 964, because they were unloved for so long, a lot of them were either trashed or crashed or salvaged, or there's a lot of 996s that are parted out, you know. The good ones are becoming fewer and further between. We are now in this 964 situation. It's sad for people who hated on the 996 and said that this would never happen, or pushed off being able to get themselves into one of them because they thought it would be like this forever. They're going to continue going down in value, but I think there still is time. There are still examples that can be found out there for reasonable money. And I just hope, my last thought here is, I'll make a whole video about this when I have a bigger plan that comes together, but I just wish that there would be a Singer or some sort of special edition resto mod, or just mod rebuilt 996 like the CSR Evo over in England. We don't have those in America, but something like that, but like the next step further, you know, where the whole thing is restyled and is made into sort of its own beast. I think it would be, you know, comment below if you agree with me, but I think it would be just a fantastic idea to have a 996 platform that's just rebuilt with all carbon panels, you know, reinforced where it needs to be, just stripped down to the bare metal and turned into a brand new car with, let's say they put a Metzger engine in it, but, you know, tune it out to and rebuild it to like sort of its own engine based on the Metzger, and something like that, and just sort of have the greatest hits of all of the early water-cooled cars and just put that into the 996 platform. That would be a phenomenal car, and I hope that that gets made eventually. So that's my 2 cents. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I don't know what's going to happen for the future, but from what has happened in the past and what I've seen happen in the past 2 years, I think that this is only the beginning of the 996 appreciation, and I am just speculating, and I could be wrong, but from what I've seen and from where I think we're going, I think I might have a point here. And once again, comment down below your thoughts. I would really love to start a discussion with this point. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next one, and enjoy the winter. 6 more weeks of it. Bye, camera.